Yeah. Well, it's 8:30, so I'll go ahead and get started. But before I start, I just want to give now three things I need to share. First, if you find that this is not something that you thought was going to be about, and there's another workshop going on, or you just want to go do something else, I will not be offended if you get up and leave. I've had other presenters say the same thing, and I always appreciated that because it's not about me, it's about what you need out of this conference. So I'll probably be hurt a little bit, but go ahead and take off. Second, I'm a DCE by nature background, so I'm not a pastor. So when I saw that it was an hour-and-a-half session, I'm like, I've never talked that long in my life. So it's probably going to be a little shorter. So that might give you time to go get more coffee or whatever you want to do afterwards. And then the last thing I have to share is I'm an introvert, so doing this, I don't mind speaking in front of groups. There's one group that absolutely drives fear into me, and speaking in front of LWML ladies. I just get so nervous. And then my college speech teacher just walked in the room, and the highest grade I ever got was an 87 in her class, so I'm now even more nervous. So
I'm so sorry.
Oh, you're good. You're good. Kidding.
I actually marked this down as something I wanted to see. I didn't realize you were teaching it. I'm so excited. So.
Well, you can tell me my grade afterwards if I've gotten better.
I'll whisper it in your ear.
Yeah.
It's just pass fail.
100.
Pass fail. I hope so. Yeah. Hope I've had a little more experience. I've talked a little bit. Yeah. My name is Nathan Schmidt, and I actually work for an organization called LAMP. It stands for Lutheran Association of Missionaries and Pilots. I'm not a pilot. We do have two other pilots. One is a pastor pilot. I call him our all-star quarterback because he does all of it. Neat guy. Lives in Saskatchewan. My province where I serve is British Columbia. So those are the communities that we serve. Those little white circles means we don't have churches going to those communities to do Vacation Bible School during the summer. But we still go in and communicate with those communities. And then just for reference, this is my hometown. I live outside the Portland area. I'm not from that crazy city that has riots and all that other crazy stuff. A beautiful city used to be, still kind of is, but that's where I served in a congregation out in Damascus for a long time, and then about 6 years ago there's a plea from LAMP for more missionaries, and I had volunteered for a long time and really enjoyed the ministry, and now I'm blessed to be a missionary serving up in British Columbia. So that's kind of my background. So that's what I do. All right. So actually, it was about 2 years ago. I think it was the last best practices, right, that we had. There was that rumor about COVID, and I remember kind of joking with people, "Oh yeah, the COVID thing." And I was getting ready to go on a trip about 2 weeks later up to British Columbia. We call it a spring fling. It's where we do a kind of a mini vacation Bible school in some of our communities. So I had about three teams that were going to go up over the course of 2 different weeks, and we'd go in to each other's communities and do Vacation Bible School. So I was getting geared up, all ready to go, and our director at the time said, "Hey, just be aware there's probably going to be maybe some shutdowns." Like, no, if it's not a big deal. It's not up in Canada yet. We'll be okay. We'll go ahead and do the Vacation Bible School. So 2 days before things are all starting to shut down, I remember the NBA canceled all the games, stores, schools, everything was just going crazy. So I called up our teams and said, it might be good that we just postpone it for a couple weeks. So maybe we'll go up in May, or we'll just cancel and do a summer trip. And so sure enough, 2 days after I would have been in Canada, they closed the border. So it was a good call. Not that I would have been stuck up there, but it would have been a little expensive and all that. So things shut down, and like everybody, kind of waiting to see what to do. And so my home church, I wasn't really active. I mean, went there on Sundays, but I shared with the pastor, like, hey, I'm not doing a lot right now. My stuff got canceled. I can maybe help with some live streaming like the other churches are starting to do. And so we tried live streaming, and it was awful. It looked terrible. Glitching and microphone issues, people walk in front of the camera. And so we said, let's do like a pre-recorded service. We'll do the message, and then we'll do some music, and then we'll put it online, and our church can watch. That's what we kind of did. So it's kind of hard to see, and I don't know if I might need the lights off. Something, yeah, it's a little bright. So I started bringing out some of my old equipment and putting videos together. And maybe you don't have eyes like mine, but this is the very first video we put online. So you can kind of see the quality. And our pastor has his lectern like he normally would, and he's talking to a blank room to people that aren't there, but the camera's right in front of him. So we started critiquing. I started investing a lot of my money and looking at other equipment, talking to other churches, what are you guys doing? And one church said, I'm just using my cell phone. That's how we're recording our services. Like, what? So I started using my cell phone, but then I started learning about depth, the f-stops and all that stuff with cameras. And so I started investing in better cameras and equipment. So this is the last video we made before we took it offline, and you can tell he's looking more at the camera. We bought a monitor that he'd read off of. There's actually lights in the room. I had actually a condenser mic. Stopped using the lapel. I had a nice digital SLR, the mirrorless camera from Sony, or Canon, sorry. All this equipment to make these videos. So we really went into it and putting the videos online for our congregation, and I'll share some more reactions to that. So then summer came, and we thought, well, let's do what other schools are doing. Let's create a virtual classroom for our communities. And so these are, you can't see all of them, but all the teams that go up to Canada, these are all the communities throughout. We're in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario. So those are all the provinces that we serve in. So we put all these things together. I had one of my former youth, she helped me build this really cool website where you can click on stuff, and there's all these interactive things. I had my son design a little what was that, Flappy Bird game, but we made it the Lamp Airplane. We had a video of like Bible stories. I created puppet skits. The other missionary is a Christian illusionist, so he had some object lessons. I mean, it was really, really well done. And hardly anybody used it. The one positive thing, though, is that it kept our teams involved. And so they are creating the content, they're doing stuff together, and then when I looked at the Google Analytics of the website, most of the hits were from the States, meaning the teams were the ones checking out their own videos, not so much the kids in the classroom. And then we learned that kids were having that, what they call now, Zoom fatigue. They didn't want to log in on a screen. They were already doing that with school. So last summer we totally did something different. Didn't really work out. And then being stuck across the border, this is my friend Alex Stoney. He's a First Nation in the Gitxsan Nation up in BC. He's a Salvation Church worker. So we created this video of us just discussing topics. A friend of mine actually encouraged me to do something like this. And so same thing, thought, oh, this is going to be a lot of interaction. People are going to look at this and ask questions. I hardly got any response. Maybe I didn't do it right or put it on the right format, but it really got me thinking, what are we doing with our social media? And I'm going to focus a lot on live streaming just because I think that's where a lot of churches are at. So I will talk about some of the social media, and that's kind of the title of the session. And I'm curious to hear some feedback too, because I'm not an expert. This is just my journey of using stuff from my home church as well as for LAMP and trying to do things and really recognizing what is ministry. Make sure I'm not off track. Okay, so this is a clip. It's kind of interesting. This is from a long time ago. I remember watching this on VHS. I'll play it. This is George Lucas talking about special effects in storytelling. Hopefully it's not too loud.
One of the fatal mistakes that almost every science fiction film makes is that they spend so much time on the settings, creating the environment, that they spend film time on it. And you don't have to spend too much film time to create an environment. What they're doing is showing off the amount of work that they generated. And it slows the pace of the film down. The story is not the settings, the story is the story, it's the plot. You're always surprised with characters. I mean, in film it's even more dramatic than it is in in writing, because eventually you actually take a real person and stick them into that character. And that real person brings with him or her an enormous package of reality. I mean, 3PO is just a hunk of plastic. And without Tony Daniels in there, it just isn't anything at all. And the first film, we had maybe 20 colors to paint with, and this time we've had 40 colors to paint with. Well, that doesn't mean it's going to be a better painting. Special effects are just a tool, a means of telling a story. People have a tendency to confuse them as an end to themselves. A special effect without a story is a pretty boring thing.
So, if you kind of caught the relationship to social media and what we do. But it always stuck with me, and it's ironic because I think people now have complained about the other movies he made because he spent a lot of time on the special effects and less on the story. But that's another topic, another conference. So. But it got me thinking about just what we're doing, and honestly, that we're probably in the first generation of using digital media and tools for ministry. And I don't think we've really done we're not off to a really good start. I think there's ways to be a lot more innovative and a lot more creative, and it's tough, especially when we're still learning and we've been forced kind of in this COVID era where it really had to come out. And I'll share some examples of what other churches are doing, but it wasn't because of COVID. It was something they're already considering. But the question I want to ask is, and that is, I think important, is how do we measure effectiveness in our church, in our ministries? And there's obviously a lot of ways to doing that and tools. I don't want to talk so much about the tools, but I do want to give us a definition. I think it's important to start with this definition because the most of our church focuses around worship. So I went on the Missouri Synod website. So this is a kosher statement, so this is not mine, this is theirs, so make sure I get it all right. But this is what they say about Lutheran worship. It puts the focus squarely on Jesus Christ, who is present for us and with us through His Word and sacraments. Lutheran worship is therefore Christ-centered, not man-centered. When we gathered for worship, we're not contemplating some far-off Christ or meditating on abstract concepts or pondering various principles for living. Neither are we in church to be amused or entertained. Christ is living, active among us, right where He promised to be in His Word and His sacraments. So that is our definition of worship, and so we'll use that as kind of our base for talking about social media. So you might have heard of Simon Sinek. This is the book Start With Why. I read it a number of years ago, and it's really changed to how I approach a lot of things, not just in ministry, but in life. And I think it's a very powerful resource. So here's just a recap if you forgot or never heard of it. This is called the Golden Circle. And so a lot of us know what our organization is about. That's the what. And a lot of us can explain the how we do our what. But very few people can understand the why. And the why is not about making money, it's the results. Why is a purpose, cause, or belief. It's the very reason for your organization's existence. So again, a very good book. It's not a Christian base at all, but it really helped me ask some of the questions I was doing in youth ministry. Why do we do this? Well, why are we doing this? And sometimes we don't always have the answer because it's what we used to do. It's what we always do. Well, the other churches are doing it, but why are they doing it? And so here's the example I want to give about a why story. So I don't know if you've heard this story or watched. There's a group put out a video a long time ago about the Kodak story. So this is back in 1975, if you can believe that. They came out, this guy right here, Steve Sesson, created the first digital camera. And Kodak said, we don't want anything to do with that. That's nice, but that's not us. And as we know, if you probably have one in your pocket, you have a digital camera. In fact, there's some really nice cameras that are coming out on these phones. We don't actually have very many digital cameras anymore. It's just a cell phone. But the story goes, they put it away because Kodak was about the Kodak moment, right? They were thinking more about the film. We make great film, and we create the Kodak moment. So I went on my phone and pulled off the last picture to tell you about my Kodak moment. This is with a good friend of mine. This picture is taken from Mesa, just down south here a little bit. This is the Oregon stop. And there's a lot of memories I can tell you about my experience, because we had a Pizza and Pipes in Tacoma, Washington, that we went to a lot until it burned down, and now there's no, I think the Oregon Grinder was in Oregon. I did go to that one in Portland. That closed. But this is an amazing place. The huge pipes and all these instruments and things that this gentleman can play. He's a young guy. Everything was done by memory. I was just shocked. I mean, he just could play anything. It was crowded. Notice I'm not talking about the quality of the picture, what it looks like, the angle, how it's not quite centered. That's all the stuff we tend to look at when we're trying to put stuff together, not realizing that Kodak failed to remember. They're not in the film industry. They're in the part of making memories and creating experiences that people can remember and then share with others. And so I think that's where Kodak missed their why. So going to online churches, and most churches, unfortunately, and I'm guilty of this too, we tend to be copycats of what other people are doing. And so right about this time when COVID hit, I called up a couple churches that I knew were doing live stream, and I asked, what are you guys doing? How are you putting this together? All three of them said we were already in the process of putting our stuff online, and COVID kind of forced it in. It's like, okay, so can you just tell me, what do you guys use? How much did you spend? All three churches, I think the minimum was $30,000 just to get their stuff going online. The others spent around $50,000, and the others spent around $50,000 Canadian to put their stuff online. So then I started asking questions. Well, how do you do your stuff? Because I was kind of do it by myself and my youngest son, who's 18 and tells me how I'm doing it wrong, which is awesome. So I tell him you do it. So we were doing it with the other sound guy, and that was it. And he's really mostly for the in-house sound. Well, the minimum crew for one church, and I might be incorrect, is 3. The other has 5 volunteers on a Sunday. The other church has 7 volunteers to run all their equipment. And so I was like, oh my goodness, we can't do this. But that's what they're doing. If you watch and look at their content, they have some really good camera angles, the equipment, the technology is there, the compression they use to put their stuff live stream, or if it's software driven, all this stuff is just mind-boggling what's out there. And if you're just to Google live stream, I mean, there's websites after websites, all the stuff you can do. It's really, really confusing, but that's what people are attempting to do. And some of these churches, one actually, it's pretty neat. They were asked if they could do live stream because in Canada, and probably more of us in the States too now, a lot of the smaller rural churches don't have a pastor. So for them to gather on a Sunday, they just wanted to have some way of having a sermon music presented because they didn't have anybody else. So that's their motive. But they're realizing more people were also connecting. So we'll talk a little bit more about that too here. But live streaming conditions our congregation to be passive spectators and not active participants. And I can attest to that because when I was watching the videos, we weren't singing along. My kids thought it was kind of funny when I tried. We could pause the pastor's sermon. It was kind of like a Netflix show. Actually, I'm jumping ahead here. But yeah, that's where we're at. I mean, if you watch people, we're always on our phones watching stuff, right? So it's very, very passive. We're not really fully participating. So I'll talk a little bit more. Whoops, here we go. So this is funny because this just happened a couple days ago. Our church asked the question, should we continue to live stream? And I said, well, I'm going to this conference and I'm going to be talking about this very topic. And I said no, and I'll share a little bit more about that. But I do remember, and this is what stuck out, some members were in the church grocery shopping, and they said, we just love those services. We can sit there with our coffee and our pajamas. It's so nice we don't have to go. And I was like, that's not what church is about. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. Here's just some other thoughts. Every church exists to help people, love God, love others, make disciples. So the question is, can we do that passively? making sure I stick to my topics. The next, and this is something I learned from another resource. There's an individual that talks about how do you get people to the next step. So if people, because we often use our social media or live streaming as a tool to reach people, because hey, look, there's people watching us online, they're seeing us, but how are we measuring that effectiveness? And this one individual says that if we can measure next steps, are people engaging in something else? Are they coming to church to be baptized? Are they joining a small group? That is another way to really measure those next steps. So how are we creating the next step to get those people, if we are using social media and live streaming to reach people, how are we getting them to those next steps? The funny thing is, and again, to make sure I don't jump too far ahead, is the comment I got, and it was one of our older individuals, and he's a really nice guy, is we talked about how many people are watching, and there's a thing you can see the views. Like, look at, we got a lot of people watching. And it's like, well, yeah, are they really, really watching? And I've heard the other statement, too, about we've got people around the world watching us, like, look, they're checking out our message. And I said, yeah, there's a few, but the one individual, her daughter lives in Australia, and she wants to see her mom play the piano. She's not really worshiping. Well, you got people in Canada. Well, they're just checking out to see what our services are like. I don't know if they're really engaging in a way that we think they are. So it's really easy to get excited. And I said to the one individual, if you look, because some of the websites will show you the length at which people are watching. Some will even show you at what point they're watching. Our 28-minute video, on average, is 7 to 8 minutes viewing time. So it means some people are watching for a few seconds, some people are watching maybe a little bit longer. We don't really fully know. And so that really made me think about, what are we doing with this stuff online? Is this really helpful if people aren't watching the whole thing? So I'll share some ideas here in a second that I think are helpful. Attendance is something that we often measure. It's a barometer we use in our church to figure out, are we reaching people, how many people are coming to the service. And if we know anything about ministry, you can't really measure people's faith and their development just solely on numbers, because we don't know where their faith is in a congregational setting. I don't know how many people profess that they're a Christian, if they're coming with the parents, and again, that's another topic, another seminar, but that's easy for us to think with the views and likes that we get on our social media posts, assume that we're having effectiveness, and I don't think we do that as well. So the other question that we can ask ourselves is, does the live stream spur on more active participation, or does it spur on more passivity and treating it like just another program or Netflix to be consumed? So the one church really tried, and we tried to do this too, is how can we engage with people online? And you have to have somebody that understands online presence. And so this individual would make a habit when he'd see people to greet online. And I would see him make comments, welcome so-and-so, welcome, I'm glad you're here, so-and-so. But he had to be watching the whole time, which means he's not in the service. In fact, the one church has a room completely separate of the sanctuary, so they don't see what's happening, so they can observe the screens and check the sound level. So I was like, wow, that's crazy. They can do that. They have a budget to do that. But that was his goal, and then he would try to ask questions relating to the sermon, or post things that were popping up, like, hey, have you thought of that? Or that's a great thing. Here's the resource. Here's the reference that he just talked about from the Bible. But that was that church, and he was trying to engage. And when I talked to him last, he said, it's really not working. It's really hard to do that. And he himself said, yeah, it's more of a passive thing than it is anything else. So that, that's really, really hard. So here's, let me keep going here, and we'll get to some content. Yeah, so the live streaming can sometimes also, and a lot of churches do this, it's kind of the fly on the wall observing. So a lot of times you're just you're not engaged. The pastor might be looking at the camera. A lot of times our pastor, I try to encourage him to look and ask the questions to engage people, but it's really hard, especially when you're live streaming, because there is an audience, or I shouldn't say audience, a congregation who is there worshiping, but there's also presence online. So that's really hard to do both, and I don't know now there probably are some churches doing it well, but I don't know if that can be that effective. But live streaming is effective. Those who are maybe traveling, those who are sick, those who are shut-ins. But notice all those are people that are probably within your congregation. That's probably not people from necessarily the outside. So I don't know. Let's see here. So here, if we're going to do live stream, and I don't know, has anybody done Zoom for church where people can actually interact? Some have. Yeah, it works a little bit, but probably more smaller settings. We tried it one time, but the individual that came in logged in. I forgot to turn on the church camera, so this individual's a visitor, and people logged in and saw his face and didn't think it was the right feed, so they logged off. So again, it's a learning process at the beginning. But one of the cool things that I get to be a part of is this is my group of professional church workers that we encourage one another. One is in Hong Kong. You can see him riding the train. One's up in Canada. That's Alex again. Another's in North Carolina. We got somebody who's in San Diego, and we're all around everywhere. But this is kind of a special time that we meet twice a month that we can connect together. But what makes this group special is we've all met one another at some point. So we have a relationship already established that allows us to have this time online. And some of the individuals say, I've had a really rough week and I look forward to this time just to connect with you guys. So this kind of stuff is awesome and amazing. But again, this is not a worship service. This is not something that we share with other people, because we know one another. These things work. And I've heard other churches do the Bible studies online, which I think are very helpful. Because again, you can engage. It's not passive where you just sit there and listen, or you can fast forward or pause the person. But this forces you to engage with one another. So that is one great resource. But if we're using social media, what does online presence look like? And I think one of the best things we can do is to tell stories. And again, I'm jumping ahead of myself, but in First Nation communities, it's a very oral culture. It's not like our Western style of classrooms. I mean, they do have classrooms up there, but all my interactions, it's all about stories and passing down the stories that their parents told their parents, and etc. And so it's really neat, because when we do Vacation Bible School, especially coming from America, you can see how we're trying to force the kids to behave and act like, do these. We're going to teach you the way we teach our kids. And then the minute we have a testimony, not a testimony, but a sharing night, it's amazing how much the people quiet down and listen to somebody else's story. And so we've realized, tell stories about yourself that relate to the Scripture, and that's how we teach a lot of times in our settings. But I think this works true as well as with online media as well. But a lot of times we use social media for promotions, right? Come to our church, come to our service. We've got a thing on Saturday, you should come. But if it does not apply to 50% or more of your congregation, it often gets ignored. And I don't know if people online, I don't know many people that look for things other than maybe Christmas and Easter, right? Most of the time they're not just going to come across a church to find out, hey, do they have, what's their sermons like? But the one thing that is helpful, and the one thing that I heard from another church, is they feel they should have more videos about their church, showing where things are at, having the pastor speak, not do a sermon, but just ways that you can, if a visitor wanted to check your church out, you can. I often go on websites when I'm traveling just to know where the church is at, what does it look like, where do I park, that kind of stuff, and that really helps me know when I'm driving, oh, there's the church, okay, that's it. But I'm not going to sit there and listen to the pastor's sermon. I'm sure it's really good, but that's just me, and I don't know how many people are going to do that, but I think we can tell stories that are effective in reaching people. No more than 20% of your social media posts should be promotional, so that can be kind of hard. What else do you put out there, and how often? And I don't know if social media is, again, the best thing. For me, I'm not a I don't do as much social media just because there's a lot of garbage out there, and it can really get you sucked in. And I don't know if people, again, I don't look, it's kind of hard. I don't look for stuff that's going to spiritually benefit me on social media. And I don't know if we can do much in that area. I don't think that's our role or our job, because I think, again, we're built on relationships as people. And to do through sharing stories, I think that's going to be a more effective approach than trying to find some creative social media posts. I did look for some resources to share, and nearly all of them, like, I wouldn't do this. It was like these things you can do to engage people, questions you can ask. And like, I don't have time to sit there even think about making something, let alone try to answer this example you're giving me. So, but again, there are probably creative ways we could do something to engage people. But I think more people are going to hear the stories we have. So how can we best use social media to reach those outside of our church? I'll give you 2 resources, and then this is really short, so I apologize, but we can do some question and answer. One of the books that I got to read right after Start With Why is this book called Influencer. Anybody heard of this book? It's a really awesome book. Not a Christian-based background, but it is a lot of examples where cultures and people groups they were trying to shift the mindset. They were trying to do something. There's an example of a construction site and safety and what they did to help people understand safety protocols. There's another one, I think it's in India, where a woman started a business, and the examples of how she influenced other people around her to create this business. Anyway, it's a lot of neat stories and just ideas. It's, again, more about the why and less about the how and the what. And this book, we actually changed. There's a little story. I had our team read it when I was at DCE to go up to our community. And one of the ideas is inviting people along with you to just observe and experience something. And so we did prayer walks, and in the morning, one of the individuals said, hey, do you want to come with us? One of the younger kids was hanging out. He said, yeah, I'll tag along. And so the reading and devotion happened to be on baptism. And this kid who's not one of my favorite kids, he is now, but was just the wily, crazy boy that you didn't really want around VBS, said, I want to be baptized, because he heard the story as they're reading devotion. And so these 2 individuals came running back in and said, hey, Taylor wants to be baptized. My first thought was, no, he's just playing around. But I could tell they're very serious. Well, the result was we had read this book, and that was one of the ideas that led to this baptism. So great book, and again, it helps us think not so much of the how do we make it look nice and look special, but what is the why behind it, how can we influence. This is more about the what and how. So I don't know if anyone's heard of Pfeiffer. Some maybe a little bit. This is an awesome place. Another church worker recommended this. This is anything to do with publication, with social media, with websites. I had my LAMP videos, the introduction little thing. I don't have it with me, but it's a video of the plane coming through and the logo splashes across the screen. Something I couldn't do. I mean, I'm sure it'd take me hours to make. I was able to send it off to one of these people. They're all freelance all around the world. I think the guy lived in, was it Turkey or something weird like that? But he took the logo, put it all together for like $60, made this amazing looking logo that I could not make myself. They do voiceover stuff, so I've started in podcasts. So there's actually a pastor somewhere, I think he's down in Texas. He does voiceovers. So he created this amazing voiceover thing for my podcast, but all really cheap, easy. So if you're looking for stuff, if you're starting to make things, you want to make it look a little more professional, this is a great resource, and you can read the reviews, you can check out what they do, and of course you can spend a lot of money. They can do a lot more. There's add-ons, all this stuff. But anyway, so that is probably a great resource if and when you're starting to do more with social media. That's about all I have. So I was anticipating being a little bit longer. But just questions or thoughts. Is there anything you guys are doing with social media? Because yeah.
One of the cool things that we've discovered is 2 things. So we're in rural Idaho, and so we have a couple of small churches that don't have pastors. And so we're able to get an elder or someone down there to do communion and stuff like once a month. And so we stream our services. And it's really cool. They join in on our Bible studies. They'll ask questions. We Zoom the Bible study part.
Awesome.
And so that's been neat to help with 2 real rural congregations. They're only like 6 to 12 people.
Yeah, yeah.
Both of those. And the other one that we found is a big breakthrough area for us is nursing homes.
Yeah.
So we actually have purchased big smart TVs for those places.
Yeah.
So that we get the privilege to come in and we have, and it's great. We do husband and wife teams that host it. So they don't have to come up with a devotion or a sermon.
Yeah.
We stream our service. They take prayer requests. They visit with folks. So that's been great. And we're reaching, and for us, it's not a huge community, but about 60, 70 people.
Yeah.
So you have the video and then a person right
Yeah.
next to it.
Yeah.
It's so they know how to run the tech,
Uh-huh.
and they host it, and then they take prayer requests. That's the level.
See, that's you're talking about interaction. That's real interactive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I'm sitting by.
Yeah, I think that works and that's an awesome when you can do that. And the cool thing too, and I don't know if those people there have any connection to the congregation members. Yeah, so that helps because that was the thing that people loved, and that's what they all enjoy. Like I can see these people, and of course, if I showed you my church video, I think it's amazing. All the stuff we did and the music, and I'm in some of the music. I think it's amazing, but you'd probably look at it and go, "Oh, that's okay." But I know those people. I know my pastor. I think he's got great sermons, but somebody else isn't going to have that. But again, because you have that connection, I think that's where it works. But to assume some stranger is just going to pop up and see it and like, "Oh, hey, I should go to that church," I don't think that's going to be it.
It's fun because I wave to them, and I acknowledge them. We
Good.
pray for them.
Yeah.
So our whole community is praying for them too. I'll tell you the other one that we have found. So just in the pandemic, we brought in about, I do 2 new member things, about 60 new adults. About half of them watched us for a number of weeks before they ever darkened the door.
Nice.
It was a safe way to say, what's this like?
Yeah, yeah,
So because they had moved to the area and were looking.
yeah,
So to be safe, it was safe, right? I'm safe in a number of ways. COVID safe and
yeah.
socially safe. Because it's always scary to walk in a new church.
Right, but those people were probably believers to start with.
Not all of them.
Okay.
Yes, a majority, certainly, Nathan. Yeah,
Good,
certainly.
okay.
But not all of them. It's
Yeah.
really we found that is really, I tell people this, if you think they're not checking you out online before they walk in the door, you're kidding yourself.
Yeah,
They're going to check you out somehow.
Yeah.
In some way. Website or live stream or
Yeah.
video or something.
yeah. And I'm not saying not do anything online. I'm saying, yeah, your website should be up to date, top notch with the information, video. Yeah,
The challenge you mentioned, I think I would bet a bunch of us would say, how do we engage these people?
yeah, yeah,
I mean,
Well,
and to what level?
And even more, at least for us in Oregon, because we were so shut down, how do we take our long-term members who have been with the church forever, but now are really enjoying sitting there in their pajamas with their coffee watching the service and aren't coming back now that things are loosening up? How do we get them to decide it's worth getting up at 8 o'clock in the morning on Sundays? And, that's, yeah.
yeah. I had a hand up here first, and I'll go back to yes.
I just wanted to say that sometimes I think we get hung up in the analytics
Mhm.
because we've been there, and you start looking at how long they watch and all that, and I think you need to throw that out and do the context of what you can do for your own people, and if other people are watching silently, cool.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a God thing.
yeah,
And we've got a lot of cool stories of our own, but I just think that analytic thing, that drove me nuts.
yeah,
Because you look at it and go, oh my gosh, why are we doing this? And you hear stories like that people are watching, but you just don't really
Yeah.
can't tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, because what we did is we were in an area in Fort Hood, and so we started live streaming way before the pandemic to help serve the people who were deployed.
yeah. Okay,
In
okay.
Iraq or Germany or whatever.
Yeah.
And we knew them, and their families were still worshiping with us, but that was the way they could then worship together with their family, even though they were deployed so far away. So that was the why we started doing it.
Yeah, good.
We had some great stories about that.
Yeah.
But I think the key, like you said, I think the why is really important. Maybe live streaming, the why of live streaming is so people can check you out, get a feel for who you are,
Yeah,
and then come, you know? Maybe that's the only why, is you just do a good enough job of them, for them, they can check you out and see and get a feel for what
Yeah.
you like. And maybe that's it, but the why I think is so critical.
Yeah, but I think too, just kind of what you're sharing, I forgot to put this in, but the people that are going to check you out are probably somebody that knows somebody else. So it's going to be a relative or friend that says, hey, you should come, hey, go to our website, you can check us out. They're more likely. But the stranger the concept that we'll put this out there to the world and they'll see us, I don't think that's the idea.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And one last thing, I know that there's a lot of other people who want to talk, but we just bought a little Mevo.
Yep.
And those are great little
Yeah.
cameras, and you set them in the front, they automatically self-produce, they'll zoom in, they'll zoom
Yeah.
out, and they're great little cameras for a tiny little church, and I don't know if you've ever seen those or not, but they're
Mevo, yeah, yeah. I was looking at that, but against my budget, the church doesn't have one, so.
And it's like $400 or something, but
Yeah.
it's everything for you, you know, and it's really, I think it's whatever.
It was good enough.
Yeah, and you don't have to have all the people to produce it. That
Yeah,
was
yeah,
the thing
that's
we were
nice.
talking
You
about.
can remotely control it.
Yeah, you produce, you know, you need 5 volunteers. In a small church, that's ridiculous.
It's, yeah. I had a hand back here. Yeah.
You had said, you touched briefly on it, about using stories to reach the lost. And I just wanted to know, I guess I was really curious about that. I mean, you're talking about using the story online, or what did you mean by this? 'Cause that's what I was really interested in.
Yeah, thanks, right. And I had more information on that, so I apologize. But I think, there's a lot of times, and maybe I'm a sucker for this, but on my social media stuff, and again, I don't do a lot with it, but I always pause the videos or when you're scrolling when it's something about an animal, right? You just see this poor animal, it's been abused, and now look at it, so you got to watch it to see how this animal's healed. But it's a story, and you're intrigued, like, it's not the quality of the video, it's not, I just want to, what happened to the dog? Did it get better? So you watch. So I think we can do a lot of that too, because again, if you don't know this, and I think we probably are aware, our attention span is so small now. It used to be like, I think 30 seconds or a minute. Now it's down to like 5 seconds. Like, just what people are able to look at. If you watch TikTok videos, that's a good example of just people's attention. They're very short because people aren't going to watch them that long. So I think if we could tell a story, it's simple, easy, just, hey, this is something to experience. And with the idea that if you look, a lot of times there's always those extra links you can click on or places you can go. If you click on the video, it takes you somewhere else. And I think that's a way maybe to engage with people. It's just simply sharing, hey, I had this rotten experience, and this is what happened to me, how I came out of it, and it's through my church or just what I read in the Bible, something simple. And if people want to engage with you, that's the idea of trying to engage with them. They could, if they know you, they could reach out or.
So it's kind of like it could be like your face story. It'd be like, I was this way, then, or I was in this bad situation, then God did this, and now I'm this way.
Yeah, I think that's going to be more effective than posting Bible verses. So much of things now are, I don't want to call it hostile, but you get all these other things that people want to comment and tell you're wrong, or that's great thought, and then all of a sudden it turns into something completely different. But I think video, and again, a lot of this is, again, I use the live stream as an example, but it's all posted on social media because that's where we're watching stuff. But I think we can do kind of the story stuff to help people.
I mean, have you done that?
I did it with Alex. That was the one thing I did, and I posted it on Facebook. And I don't know if I did it wrong or whatever, but I only had like a few people watch it. We actually made another video, but Alex is still young in his faith. There's some things in there theologically weren't quite right, so I have to go back and edit some of it out or change it. But my idea is to post that because I want other people to see it up in First Nation communities, and having Alex there to tell it with me, I think helps people recognize, oh, that's Alex. And his sister's a famous artist up there, so they know the Stoney family. And he's actually really amazing with technology as well and videos. But that was my idea to help engage people because I couldn't be in the community.
How long was the video?
That was the other problem. This one I think was about, that one was about 10-15 minutes. The one we did in person is really cool. It was about half an hour. I'm like, we got to shorten down the content.
It's like 2 minutes is what they say.
Yeah.
That's max 2 minutes.
So I got to do some editing.
Norman,
Yeah.
we started with like my men's Bible class. We started with trying to do the Zoom, and because we were trying to stay together and keep praying. And we're in Hawaii, And, but we moved to teleconferencing, forget the video, and so we're just stuck where we are, where we're at. So I got guys on the Big Island and Kauai, and we still meet on Saturday mornings, just using our phone.
Yeah.
Some are in the car, and you can tell, hey, you gotta mute. So those other techniques, but the community is still there. And we're sharing and praying for each other. And it tends to go longer, so your battery better be charged on your phone.
Yeah.
But for me, I can cheat a little. You know, I don't have to like put on my brain, then go to the meeting. I can put out my books.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
when the questions come up. But the other added thing that happens is, because now you get your phone number, like we get texts of extra videos from everybody else doing this stuff. Hey, you should check this guy out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is interesting. It's like, it's all new, and we got to figure it out how to do
Yeah.
it. Because there's more than just the worship for us, right? There's discipling and building a community, and we still got schools we're worried about, so that we can perpetuate that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're starting to slowly get better with that, and I think we're starting. Yeah.
Fast learners, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So in response to what she talked about stories, one of the things that we've been discovering is that what the younger people want is really genuineness. So you don't have to tell the story being it's all wonderful and everything else. You can just say it's a tough day today, but this passage did comfort me, or this is how my friend called and we talked. You know, I mean, just really those types of stories I think really also resonate really well. I think we like to have everything all buttoned up and have everything look all shiny and nice, right? And it all turns out okay. Well, the reality is I think a lot of the younger people are now looking for genuine.
Yeah.
That means that it doesn't always turn out to the best that you like, but as we know, we have the hope and we have, and so that's a story you can tell.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think we, at my generation, needs to understand that's okay to be genuine, to be really
Yeah.
open, and
Then you see that.
sharing with people what's really going on.
Don't try to make it all look perfect.
Right.
Right,
Don't-
yeah.
Don't make it all look real beautiful and everything else, and even the videos. People like more genuine videos, I think, now too, than they do the more professional ones.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the younger people came out and saw the attractional model, and they saw through it. They don't want it anymore. They want genuine. They want genuine people. What is your faith really? How is it really genuine? And that's, I think, the video is an amazing way to share that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something that I found, I do a little post on Facebook just about every day, and I use that to kind of drip the message of the previous Sunday's message, whether it's the theme verse with an image behind it, or a question, or things that kind of go along with the theme. And people see it. It goes to Facebook and Instagram. People see it. You'll get a like on it here and there. But when I post a photo of something that happened in the church, or like the preschoolers saying, here's a photo of the preschoolers, or this was trivia night, and those blow up.
Yeah. Yeah.
People
Yeah.
are excited
Yes.
to see people.
Yes, tell
Yeah.
your own
Yeah.
story, tell them what, yeah.
So, but we're not used to walking around church events taking pictures,
Yeah.
at least not at my church. So I have to kind of chase people down. Did you take any pictures of this thing? Because I'm not at every event. Did you take any pictures? Did you take any? So it's a different kind of thing to be aware of, and it takes more time, but that's what people love.
Yeah.
Going
Yeah.
into classrooms, getting videos when they're
Yeah.
in Bible
We do
class,
the same
singing
thing.
worship songs. Oh my gosh, you'll get so many likes on those. I did last week. Preschoolers were singing worship songs, and I went from 2 likes on the last post to 45, and it was like, I just want to see the kids.
Yeah, we did puppets. And it's a long story, but we've had a puppet group for a while, and we posted the felt kind of bad. We posted the video separate because again the music director's daughters in Australia and her kids love the puppets. So I'll make another video separate. We had more hits on the puppets than we did on the church service, and it's just so it's funny. Yeah.
And especially, oh sorry.
No, you're right, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Say especially if you have a preschool or a school attached. So most of the preschool families do not attend our church. Most of them are from the community, not the church. So if there's a photo of their kids, suddenly
Oh, yeah.
they're interested
Yeah.
in what the church is doing.
Yeah, yeah. No, pictures are powerful, especially when you know what's going on in it. Yeah.
I was going to say that we've been pretty successful with our online services, although, as I said before, we're starting to worry about whether we've been too successful for some of our members. So this fall, we did a church-wide Bible study, and I created social media for it that was very, very layered. So they met in small groups. Some of those small groups were physical, some of them were online. We also had blogs and discussions that involved the whole congregation. We had small groups take pictures of themselves in their houses, and everybody started sharing those. And we got incredible interaction, both in the small groups and then among the small groups. And most of those small groups had invited neighbors or had invited, because we encourage them, don't just be church members, go ahead and reach out to your neighbors and have them join in on this. And that worked really, really well. And we know that some of those neighbors have started attending since then. And
Nice, good.
So layering like that, because if you the theory that we had was if you layer like that, you'll hit somebody somewhere with what they want. Whether it's an online discussion and then the pastor also did, his sermon series was focused on the same thing we were studying, and we posted the service, and people will go and look at that, but we also separated out the sermon and posted that, and
Nice.
both of those would start to get hits, so.
Yeah.
I think, I kind of like what you were saying, because I think we can get bogged down in analytics, and we should probably pay attention to them. We want to know that we're having some effect. But it's like I'm getting bogged down on membership numbers. What really is important is that we're getting God's word out there, and it's God's word that's effective, not us.
Yeah.
So part of it is a little bit of trust, but you want to do your best to,
Yeah.
to meet as many audiences as
But
you can.
you probably have somebody on staff to do all that, or
We have, yeah, we do. We've got a director of communications, and then I came in with a lot of tech skills.
Yeah.
So I was able to do most of it for the Bible study. And as you were describing, we're one of those churches that did buy multiple cameras, and we've got some incredible volunteer people. But we're a larger church
Yeah,
with some
yeah.
good resources where we're at. So
yeah,
I think you can do it on a smaller budget.
you can, and it's hard, and
But it's
that's
time consuming.
yeah, and we tend to try to copy versus trying to do what we can do, and there's some simple, easy things. And again, we have to remember the why behind it, because it's easy to look at the big churches and go, "Well, we got to do this, and we got to make it look," and yeah, there's ways of keeping it simple.
Yeah.
Before you go on, can you explain layering?
From my perspective, you should know I come out of after teaching him. He's not
Years
the one
ago.
who drove me out. So,
Good.
And he was teachable. And he was very teachable because he's doing a brilliant job.
100, I hear 100.
But later on in my ministry, I got involved in distance education. So I did learn about the concept of working with students and creating technical ways of reaching them at different layers. So some people like to watch videos, and that'll be it. They won't interact with it. Some like to get online in a threaded discussion, and they'll interact for an hour if they can find somebody to interact with them. They love that. Some of them like to do asynchronously. Some of them like to do it live. Some like to see it on a feed, and they might respond on a feed, or they might share it with a friend. So we simply tried to make as many different digital resources available to them as possible. Everybody that did the Bible study was doing small groups, so there was that consistency. We were all doing the same chapter all the way through, working together. But what they chose to get involved with beyond that was up to them. We just gave them all kinds of different choices. And we found that it started to break down some of the silos that were being created by online worship, where families were worshiping, but they weren't necessarily talking to, Roseanne that they used to talk to every Sunday. That started to happen again, which is good. So we used Facebook, threaded discussions, some social media posts, videos. I made some digital bookmarks and pathways that they could go through, that kind of thing. So it wasn't that hard. It was pretty simple stuff. But I just made sure we used a lot of it.
Yeah. Yes.
I just have a question for you.
Yeah.
How did you define success? You said you're very successful. How
Oh,
did you define that?
I would say we're successful because engagement still has been pretty high, and when I've
So when
been
you say
talking,
engagement, though, I'm
that they're
taking it down.
that they're worshiping, and
They're there.
they're even though they're in their homes, and I'm able to tell that because we're chatting with them. And I'm not talking about reaching out. You were talking about evangelism,
Okay, that's
and
what I
I'm
was trying to
definitely talking
understand,
about.
yes.
I'm definitely talking about our congregation members. But when I talk to them about the sermon and I ask a sentence, and ask a leading question, I can tell that they listen to the sermon. I can tell that they
Yeah.
listen along, and we're starting to see each other a little more, so I can actually figure that out. We also hear from a lot of them that they've been sharing it with their relatives. Now, whether the relatives are engaging as much as the congregation members, I don't know, but there has been a lot of
Yeah.
sharing.
No, I'm all for digital media, doing technology. I just think we're at the beginning process and we're kind of clumsy with it. But I think we're starting to figure out, and again, I think it's helpful to look at the why. What's the purpose? How are we doing it?
Absolutely.
How do people see it? Because we see people we love on the screen, but they see strangers. So what kind of message? And I think there's a lot of good we can do. It's just training ourselves and realizing, too, it takes a lot of effort. I mean, I don't know if you looked at some of the job descriptions in the app, but I think there's like 4 of them all built just on technology and all the stuff. In fact, I know 2 churches that are trying to hire someone just to do video content, social media, and that's their main job.
And what would worry me, and when you see that, is okay. That could be wonderful, but are they putting their resources to the right place?
Yeah.
That goes back to why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Why are we
What are
doing
they
it?
doing it?
Yeah.
Are they making it easier for their current congregational members to not be engaged in community?
Yeah.
Stay
Yeah.
home in their pajamas?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the word, right?
Yeah.
Or not? I mean, it's really a dilemma.
Well, yeah, and the question I had last week is, are we going to continue live? Do we want to start live streaming? And I based off this said no, because we only have a few people,
Yeah.
and there are some that are still at home. But Oregon, hopefully, at the end of March will be maskless, and all the restrictions are gone. So.
Please.
Yeah, so I'm curious to see, and that's what's going to happen after everything's, I wouldn't say back to normal, but all that stuff's, how many what are we going to see back in our services?
Yeah,
So-
I'm curious about that too. Are people going to come back because they don't have the option of live streaming, or are they just not going to come at all?
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
this says 30% are never coming back.
Yeah.
Ever again, we've lost them. That's what Barnes
Yeah.
says. And whether that's really.
I do love Barnum, but if you track the last 4 years, we're all dead.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yes, question.
So it seems like younger people spend most of their time on Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, things like that. Have you seen anybody, or you have examples of anybody that uses those platforms successfully for, evangelism or
That's a good.
engaging younger people or sending the message or?
Yeah, so probably a bad example of that. I personally have not seen it, and maybe there is some people. There are some people that post stuff that I know, friends, and it's a message, and they've done it on all the platforms. It gets mixed reviews, and sometimes I don't think people understand, because the Christian faith, if you read certain passages or understand what we're doing, it can be confusing to an outside person. So it's really easy to misinterpret. And being in Canada, I don't know if you heard of the stories of the residential schools. It's a terrible history, and it's flared up again in Canada. And unfortunately, a lot of the churches back then were part of that process. So it's easy today. In fact, one of the communities that we serve, some kids locally burned down the church out of kind of a protest, even though it was built by their own people and nothing to do with residential school. So it's really hard sometimes, because I'm nervous if I post something, well, it's that white person telling me this message. So, and I think other people maybe see that too and get misinterpreted. So it's real hard, I think, to use it effectively, but I'm sure there's some people doing it. But again, I think sharing stories in a way that engages somebody that knows you, I think can spark that conversation, hopefully if they see you or post something online asking questions. But it's hard, and I don't know anyone doing it successfully. And there maybe is, I just haven't seen
There's
it.
some large Londoners that do it really well, and they engage people in there. But
Thanks.
Staffs that do
The thing that I find interesting about those platforms is, in 60 seconds or 90 seconds, they can show you how to, completely remodel your kitchen, or to,
Yeah.
put together a car, so they can take really, really complicated concepts, break them down pretty simply, put it together in an engaging, 90-second story, and get thousands of people to, drive traffic towards buying that product or doing this or doing that. It's like, feels like a good platform for taking a hard story to tell.
Yeah.
Breaking it down.
Break it down into
There's a
little
thing called
pieces
the
and
Bible
make it
Project that does that with the scriptures, like for a book of the Bible, and they have these drawings. And,
Oh, yeah, that's
that's
cool.
the sort of thing that you're talking about. Like, there's a lot of information, it's really complex, but they simplify it and they
They do
give
a
you
good job
summary.
reusing
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. There's a Lutheran pastor, I don't know if he's here, but he's similar to that. Does some amazing stuff, kind of the same thing, explaining kind of catechism type questions. And I've tried to figure out how to use his stuff, but it's kind of too deep for First Nations people. But yeah, there's probably people doing it. And I think, again, it's the leading to the next step. So maybe they hear a story and there's a link to the video of the Bible story that they would check out. But yeah, I haven't seen a whole lot of it, but it's there. I mean, and everything's online, out there, social media. And I'm not a huge social media guy, but I know there's people are, and that, again, the churches that are doing it have a paid person or somebody who's very gifted, dedicated to doing that. But it takes a lot of effort. It's not something, I think that's where it's tricky. We want to just copy and paste and do something similar, and that's where we get stuck, losing our why behind that. But yeah.
And part of the challenge is it's the algorithms that everybody that are adjusting or looking at everything. And to get your algorithms to really look good, you have to be posting 2 or 3 times a day. You have to be responding to people. You have to be responding to other people. And then there's this huge algorithm that then drives your traffic up, which to reach people. But to do that, think about that. If you were posting 2 or 3 times a day and responding to everybody and connecting in with other communities, to get your algorithms up to be able to be seen out there even, it takes a full-time staff to do stuff like that. And I don't think any of us, maybe there's people in this room that have that staff, but I know we don't. So how do you use it to the best of our ability?
I guess I look at our kids and, we're having dinner and they're engaging and posting and, so, I think part of it is getting some young kids, younger generation, interested in doing this for you.
Yeah.
It comes back to the why, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Because if we decide that we can reach an entire generation through social media and that is the only door, then maybe we need to put the time to it.
We need to get good at it, if that's what we believe is the why.
Maybe it means you hire someone for 10 hours a week or 15 hours a week, and that's what they do.
Or find some digital creators that are going to put a nice little story together in 90 seconds and sell it to you for $50.
The challenge is you got to do it 2 or 3 times a day is what they're saying when you use social media.
Yeah.
I think we can get stuck in the all or nothing kind of dichotomy as well. It's like, well, if it's not going to tick all the boxes, then we're not going to do it at all. But posting once a day is better than posting 3 times a week. It's better than not posting at all. And they can make it easy too. So I spend about an hour a week designing a daily post, and you schedule it. You don't have to be there on there every day. You schedule it. I could spend a lot more time than that. I absolutely could.
What platform?
Facebook, Instagram. That's all I've got so far. But it's something. So if we don't get caught in the all or nothing, I think we have a lot more options than
Yeah. And another element to think about too, and this is what I got stuck with our church, because I asked the question, if we're going to live stream, if we're going to do this, then and I didn't say this to our pastor, but it needs to be a shared vision by the whole church. And so they approached it, instead of saying, what's our why, what are we doing? It's like, well, we need a building project because we need to build a separate area for our streaming. We need to figure out staffing and all that. And so it just got bogged down and just quit. But the vision wasn't there of like, why are we doing this? And if we're going to do it, he needs to be aware, because our pastor's, he's again a great sermon preacher, but his sermon is not always aware of things going on. So that Engage Online for him and I don't know if we can teach them is a whole nother teaching element of online presentation. But again, that's the whole thing, and the whole church needs to understand that, and that's the approach I'm taking from this is how do we as a church, as individuals, yeah, there's a lot we can do, but it takes a lot of effort and time and process.
Are y'all aware of the new thing too that's coming out with the VR churches that where you have an avatar, the pastor actually has an avatar.
Yeah.
Every person has avatars and you actually are joining together in worship together on virtual reality, and people are getting baptized virtually, all this type of stuff. It's just absolutely crazy what's going on right now in the virtual reality world. And people are thinking this is a way to reach people through these avatars.
Sounds like a movie.
Worship service.
Sincerely doing it as a worship service.
They're not just like mocking.
No, it is a real worship service.
Yeah.
And all of the avatars are all coming together and worshiping, and actually people getting baptized.
So people would love to show their, like, hey, my avatar in that church, look, there they are, or whatever. Is that it?
Actually, they would be in church though, because they
Right, they would be
yeah,
in church,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I mean, on the virtual, it would just look like their avatar.
It's just bizarre.
That's
I mean,
crazy.
Yeah, I think there's some social, psychological things there too. I don't know. Yeah, there is a yeah.
Oh, yeah, think about this virtual baptism of baptism. I mean, think about it.
Your avatar might be saved.
Your avatar.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, glad you're here.
Hey, Paul,